Live with CDP Sports Talk, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet. Live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Anchor FM, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Radio Public, and TuneIn. Now, here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Season 10, Episode 29, overall 524 of Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show, sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, along with their great selection of all-electric vehicles and Cadillac vehicles as well. You can call the dealership at 519-824-0210 and tell them Chris Palme sent you, or you can email the dealership at info@barrycullen.com. Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership has been run and operated here in the city of Guelph since 1969, and yours truly has been a customer of Barry Cullen Chevrolet here in Guelph for the last 25 years. I hope everyone's doing well on this Wednesday, April 16th, 2025. And before we get our guest on here tonight, I want to wish everybody a happy holidays, a happy Easter coming up this week. I guess Friday is Good Friday, and then Sunday is Easter Sunday. So for those who celebrate, happy Easter. And I want to say thank you to everyone coming aboard this show tonight, which will be live streamed on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, X, and Instagram as well. So I'm going to bring on a guest shortly. He is a friend of the show and a friend of mine, and this is his 7th appearance, and his name is Greg Eno, and he is the co-host of the Knee Jerks podcast, and he's also a sports historian based out of Detroit, Michigan. And Greg, I want to say thank you for coming on for a 7th time tonight.
I can't believe it's been 7 times. Time flies when you're having fun, right? 10 years, by the way. I didn't know that either. I heard that in your intro. 524 shows. That's nothing to sneeze at. So congratulations for that. And it's good to be here with you talking Pistons.
Well, thank you so much, Greg. And you're one of the original podcasters for doing this for over 15 years. So I still have a little ways to go yet, but this is something I have a passion for, and I'm working hard to get my show back on a radio station again as well.
Great.
How are you doing, and how are things in the city of Detroit right now, especially with the Pistons back in the playoffs for the first time in 6 years?
Yeah, and it's not just that they're back in the playoffs. It's, 2019, yes, they made it. They squeezed in on the last day of the season. I think they were 500 even.
Yes.
Blake Griffin gave his heart and soul that season and just broke down physically at the end of the year and did not even, I don't think he even played in the playoffs. They got swept, or maybe he played briefly. They got swept by Milwaukee. They never had a shot. Nobody thought they had a shot in that series. So yeah, they made the playoffs. That's true, but there wasn't really a lot of excitement around that. This year, a lot different. There's a feeling that the Pistons might match up well against the Knicks, and that there could be, if not a series victory, certainly a couple games the Pistons could steal and maybe extend this thing to 6 games. But there's a different vibe, Chris, this year than there was in 2019, because this just feels a little bit more real.
Since Tom Gore has owned the team, they've only had 3 winning seasons, actually 2, 2015-16, and then this year. The team in 18-19, I believe, was Blake Griffin was 41-41. So really, they haven't had a lot of success under Tom Gore's. And Greg, since you're in Detroit, I imagine the team chants have stopped at Little Caesars Arena this year with the super story of the Pistons going from 14 wins to 44 wins.
No team, as you can imagine, has ever tripled their win total from one year to the next. That's unheard of. So there's that. Gore's, I wrote a column about, a month or so ago. And by the way, to read my columns, please go to gregeno.substack.com. Please subscribe. I'll be in your inbox every Monday if you do. anyhow, I did a piece on Gores, and I did it from the perspective of it's nice to not talk about Tom Gores, quite frankly. I mean, you mentioned the lack of success over the years, and part of that has, like you said, drawn the ire of the fans, and you're right. There were a lot of chants last year during the 28 game losing streak. Sell the team, which of course never happens, but the fans, they always resort to that when they get frustrated. And, Gores sometimes can get kind of tone deaf in interviews. He had a really bad interview last season around Christmas time where he was not excusing the 28 game losing streak, but trying to call attention to the fact that Pistons were very active in the community and doing a lot of charitable work. And I think he even said something like, if you take wins away, we're doing pretty good. And that didn't set well. But now this year, nobody's talking about Tom Gores, which is great. They're talking about J.B. Bickerstaff. They're talking about Katie Cunningham. They're talking about Trajan Langdon. They're talking about Malik Beasley. They're talking about Ron Holland. They're talking about everything but the owner, which is the way it should be. I mean, when you've got a winning organization, nobody knows who the owner is, really. They really don't. I mean, unless you're George Steinbrenner or something like that, who's really kind of, a larger than life figure. Most fans don't know who owns the successful teams. Why? Because the successful teams, it's not about the owner. It's about the players and the success and the wins and the coaches. It's not about who owns the team unless their name comes up during a trophy presentation or something. So this is the way it should be, not talking about the owner and talking instead about what's the product on the court.
The one guy I'm very happy for with his team's success is longtime Pistons announcer since '76, George Blaha, because it's been brutal the last, 15 years or so. And it's nice to see him being able to call a winning team. And you're right. What's difference between this team and the other two Pistons team is this team is young, they're talented, and they're hungry, and they have some fight in them. Now, I'm not comparing them to the bad boys teams or the going to work Pistons, but they're creating their own identity, and the fans can really identify with the grit of this team.
I don't know that I wouldn't compare them to the bad boys, and because they have an edge, Chris. I'm not sure how often you've seen them play, but they have an edge to them that is a little bit, a little prickly, and I like that. I mean, they've got some guys like Isaiah Stewart, Ron Holland, even though he's a rookie. These guys, they don't take a lot of crap on the court. I mean, they're not thugs. But they're here to say, hey, look, we're the Pistons. And I don't know if you caught it, but when Stewart got ejected a couple of weeks ago in Minnesota,
yes,
he walked off the court, held up the Detroit part on his jersey and pointed to it. I'm from Detroit. We're Detroit, and that's what it's all about. I mean, I think it's okay to maybe draw some comparisons to that team because the Pistons, as you know, the Pistons' successful teams of the past have prided themselves on what?
Defense and physical play.
Right, exactly. Bingo. And that's been the hallmark. And that was the hallmark in 2004 with the going to work team. That was the hallmark, obviously, in 89-90 with those two teams. The three championship teams have been all about defense and being about, physicality and playing, not giving an inch. And that's what this team does. This team, you're right that they have their own personality. That's true. But their personality really, I think, is really closely modeled after those teams of the past. And of course, the fans here eat that stuff up. The fans of Detroit have always been really drawn to the grit of their teams. The Lions have that, of course, right now. The Pistons clearly have that. Even the Tigers last year, when they made that run,
they were
kind of a bunch of no-name guys, just, a bunch of ragtag, not a lot of players that fans have really heard of. And here they are, winning almost every night to get to the playoffs. They kind of had their own personality. And so, yeah, it's a hallmark, it's a hallmark of Detroit, successful Detroit teams. The Red Wings Stanley Cup teams to a degree had that. And fans love that stuff here.
I really, honestly, I thought going into the season as fan and in media, I thought, okay, they won 14 games. Let's be optimistic. I thought maybe let's see if they could double that win total to 28 wins. Right. And I did not see 44 wins coming in. I wanted to get your opinion, Greg. What are your thoughts on Langdon, the president of basketball operations, and how much of an impact he's had on this team's improvement with the talent that was already in place?
Yeah, well, the the thing that he did shortly after he got the job last summer was what we've been crying for Troy Weaver to do, which he didn't do, which was supplement the roster with really good veteran players. I mean, guys who could knock shots down. That was the key too. He got shooters in here. You know, he got Tim Hardaway Jr. He got Malik Beasley. He brought back Tobias Harris. You know, he got guys who have been around the block a little bit, quite frankly. You know, it's fair to say that they're in the back, maybe on the back ends of their careers a little bit, but they could play, and they've played for winning organizations. But most importantly, they could knock shots down, and that was the thing about the Pistons teams of the past, that they were not able to surround Cade Cunningham with capable shooters who could help space the floor. And that's exactly what Trajan Langdon did in the offseason. The other thing he did, which was brilliant, and this is a move that doesn't get, you know, I know people in the NBA circles talk about it, and the people here in Detroit do. But nationally, I don't know that it's gotten a lot of traction yet. Maybe it will in the playoffs because they're playing New York. And that is when he picked up Dennis Schroeder. That was an incredible pickup. He did that right around the trade deadline. It was kind of got lost in the shuffle in that Jimmy Butler trade. But that was, you know, Trajan really didn't give up anything to get Schroeder. And this is another guy who, and the thing about this Schroeder thing, it wasn't just picking up a guy for the sake of picking up a guy. The Pistons at the time, Chris, really, even though they were doing well and were overachieving, still had a glaring hole on the roster, which was they didn't have a secondary ball handler to complement Cade Cunningham. When Cade Cunningham was out of the lineup, they struggled with ball handling. And they kind of went point guard by committee a little bit when Cade was not on the floor. And on top of that, you know, JB would maybe felt compelled to play Cade maybe a few more minutes than he would have liked to because of those difficulties. They bring Schroeder in, who, you know, was just exactly what the Pistons needed. I kind of, you know, it reminds me of, if you remember back in 97, when the Red Wings, before they won their first cup since 55, picked up Larry Murphy, defenseman from the Leafs. Larry Murphy was essentially booed out of Toronto. For whatever reason, the fans there put a lot of their ire and dumped it on Larry Murphy. And Larry was older, of course, at the time. He had already won a couple of cups with Pittsburgh. So Kenny Island picked him up for a song at the deadline in 97. And Murphy proved to be kind of like the missing link on the blue line, what they needed. Another puck handling defenseman who could bring some offensive skills to the table. A great guy in the power play, great point man, smart, won two Stanley Cups. And, you know, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the Red Wings would not have won the Stanley Cup, you know, if they didn't have Larry Murphy. But that Larry Murphy move was so crucial to the success of that team. Schroeder comes in and immediately fits in. This guy had it was as if he was on the roster from training camp. Fit in immediately. JB knew how to use him immediately, provided that help. And when you pick up a guy that late in the season, kind of like when Joe Dumars picked up Rasheed Wallace in 2004, when you pick up a guy that late in the season and he fills a specific need, and he's not just another passenger on the bus, he fits a specific need. That's brilliant front office moves, and that's what Trajan Langdon did.
Do you think Langdon should be the NBA's Executive of the Year? Do you think he should win the Executive of the Year?
I would be hard pressed to make an argument why he shouldn't, because of what I just said. I mean, I know there's a lot of other people that would be, you know, capable, of course. But I mean, as far as you just look at here's the other thing: Pistons lost Jaden Ivey on January 1st, just lost him for the whole season. And at the time, you know, Jaden was having a really good year, and the Pistons fan base was really broke up about that. You know, oh, there goes the season. Jaden Ivey's gone down. Oh my God, how are we going to survive? Well, they didn't really miss a beat after Ivey went down. Now, that's not taking anything away from Ivey. Why? Because, again, the Harrises of the world, the Hardaways of the world, Beasleys, all these older guys, that even Fontecchio, guys that he brought in, that Langdon brought in, they may not have always had a great night every single night they played. they still contributed in a way that the teams of the past in Detroit didn't. The rosters were a mess. I think the Pistons played, I want to say they suited up like 30 or 40 guys last season, some ridiculous number of players that played last year. Why? Because they didn't have the roster, construction they were playing G League guys. Let's face it, Chris, by the end of the year last year, 4/5 of that roster, almost at least 3/5 of that roster on any given on the floor, I should say, 3/5 of the people on the floor were not NBA players. They were not. They were G Leaguers masquerading as NBA players. And that's another reason why they only won 14 games.
You've been covering sports a long time, Greg, and you've seen a lot of great turnarounds. Where would you rank this Pistons turnaround in terms of all great turnarounds in professional sports, not just the NBA?
That's a good question. Well, again, first team to triple their win total, so that in and of itself puts them up there. I want to see. I will see what. I guess ask me that question after the playoffs. Only the reason I say that is because God forbid they go out and get swept by the Knicks, which I don't think is going to happen. That's going to put a damper on things for sure. But if you're just going to talk about regular season turnarounds in Detroit, I can't really think of any that rival it because all the teams that have won big in Detroit were good the year before for the most part. They didn't like come out of the blue and become, champions. These are all teams that were gradually getting better, knocking on the door. Then they finally, kicked the door down. So there really wasn't any, there hasn't really been like a rags to riches story in Detroit that I can recall where a team just came out of the blue and, became winners. Now, the closest thing I could even come up with, and it's not even really that close, was when the Lions won 2 games in 1979, drafted Billy Sims, won their first 4 games in 1980 and finished 9-7, but not in the playoffs. A disappointing finish after a strong start. So I'm not going to put that one up there. And the other teams, they were all good. The 05-06 Tigers, that turnaround was a little surprising when Jimmy Lee took over. But again, they weren't awful. They were bad. I think they won like 72, 73 games in 05, and they didn't look like contenders. And they did make it to the World Series. But this, to me, is just more dramatic. This is, in the NBA, it's hard to triple your win total, to go from 14 to 44. Now, if the Tigers of 05 were like 43 and 119 that made it to the World Series the next year, I might buy it. But this is really amazing.
I know in the late 70s and early 80s, the Pistons had some bad teams, and then they drafted Isaiah Thomas in 81 and then brought in Chuck Daly in 83. But we always knew Cade had the talent. How much was adding these players like Harris and Schroeder and Hardaway and Beasley made a difference to Cade? And I wanted to get your thoughts on the hiring of head coach J.B. Bickerstaff.
Well, first of all, I will tell you that even JB and even Trajan have said publicly that the Pistons are ahead of schedule. They didn't try to tell us, oh, we knew all this all along. We knew we could do this. No. Now they knew that they would be better, of course, but neither of them, if you had asked them at the beginning of the season, where are you going to finish? Neither of them would have said 44 wins. I can assure you of that. The thing about, and the other thing too, by the way, and nobody talks about this either, is JB brought in Luke Walton to be his top assistant. Now, Luke has been, as you know, a head coach in the NBA on a couple of different occasions, and knows the game, in and out. And I think that when you bring in a strong top guy like that, that helps too. But JB has done it's kind of the same thing that Dan Campbell did with the Lions, which is he got buy-in. He got players to buy into whatever he was selling. And what he's selling is a personality. And I hate to use the word culture because that word gets, I think overused, but JB has created a personality for this team and a mission and an attitude. And he's done it incrementally, and he's done it. He must be a great communicator. I know that's one of the reasons why they hired him to coach, was his communication skills. And every great coach, Chris, in any sport, those that admire those great coaches will tell you that they're all great communicators. And so that's what JB has done. And as the wins start to pile up, and they don't forget they didn't start out real fast either. This was a team that took a little while to get going. I think they were, 11-16 at one point or something like that. So it took them a little bit of time to get there. But once you start stacking W's, and guys start to have years that were unexpected, even though you acquired them, like Beasley, who was completely shot the lights out from 3-point land. All of a sudden now, you start to believe, and you turn, the calendar turns to 2025, and now you're 500, and now you're, you start to build more confidence, and you start to build more of an attitude, and now you start to think, well, we're the Pistons, we're back, and that's once that gets rolling, it's like a snowball effect. And they may have stumbled a little bit toward the end of the year. That's true, but they had a tough schedule. But playoffs are a different season now. They can wipe that slate clean, have some time now to get ready for the Knicks. And I told a lot of people at the end of the year, the last few weeks of the season, I would not want to draw the Pistons in the first round. That is not an easy out. I would not want a guy like Beasley, Chris, can win a series. I just wrote an article, a column Monday on my Substack about Bernard King killing the Pistons in 84. Averaged 42 points a game in a 5-game series, literally beat the Pistons single-handedly. Now, I'm not saying Beasley's going to do that, but a guy like Beasley, they can give other teams nightmares. Tom Thibodeau of the Knicks plays his starters 35, 37 minutes a night. A guy like Beasley can come off the bench and torch you, and your starters out there a little tired, and before you know it, he's dropped 23 points. He's like 5 for 10 from 3-point land, and if he gets hot, it's like Vinnie Johnson did to the Celtics in 85. A guy gets hot like that, in a series, they could be saying Malik effing Beasley in New York. You never know what could happen. Now he could go out there and be cold as ice. I don't know, but if he gets hot and the rest of the team does what they've been doing all year long, that would be a nightmare for the Knicks.
For those watching this live stream or on the audio, and they say, listen, this team has really overachieved this year, won their 44 games. They don't have a chance against the Knicks. Everybody's counting them out, including the national media. I really feel this team has a really good chance against the Knicks, and I think they match up well against the Knicks. Against Indiana and Milwaukee, I'm not so sure, but I just feel this is a good matchup for the Pistons. And you know what? It's okay being the underdogs, because I think that's how the Detroit teams love being the underdogs.
Yeah, I agree with you that they do match up well, and I'm not just saying that based on the fact they were 3-1 against the Knicks, and they were 2-0 in Madison Square Garden, by the way, this year. They do match up well, and it's their physicality. My concern with if they had played the Pacers is because those teams just don't like each other. That would be an all-out war. And my concern about the Pacers matchup is that the Pistons might get bait because they're still kind of young, and they might get baited into losing their cool, and which sometimes happens. Stewart is a prime example of that. You can get into his head a little bit, and he can do some things on the floor that are stupid, and then it'll get him and the team in trouble. Last thing you want to do is Stu do something that might get him a 1-game suspension during a series or something like that, which can happen. So that was my concern about the Pacers, was that the physicality might be too much almost. And Pacers are a really trash talking team, and the Pistons and the Pacers just simply do not like each other. And that was why I was afraid to play for the Pistons to play the Pacers. But the Knicks, yeah, I mean, the thing about the Knicks, back to Stewart, though, I can't say enough about this guy. He did a pretty good job on Karl Anthony Towns during the regular season. And I noticed Towns was getting a little frustrated going up against Stu. And so, I agree with you. And I know Brunson's going to be a nightmare to handle. There's no question about that. I mean, that's not a favorable one for the Pistons on the floor. But I think Karl Anthony Towns could get a little bit off his game a little bit. But Brunson is a tough one. He's a tough cookie. That's not going to be easy. There's going to be a lot of Jalen Brunson highlights in this series for sure.
Do you feel the the Pistons' lack of playoff experience could hurt them in this series, or do you
You know,
think maybe it might be an asset because these guys are just going to go in and just keep playing the way they have been?
yeah, I don't know that I don't know that I buy that whole playoff experience thing. I mean, here's my feeling about playoff experience is if you have it, you think it's an advantage. You tell yourself that we have the playoff experience, so we're going to use that as an advantage. Mentally, you say that. If you don't have it, you disregard it. Oh, we don't. Doesn't matter. We're young. We don't know any better. We're playing with house money. We can go out there, be loosey goosey. I don't think. I think both teams can use it to their advantage. The Knicks are going to tell themselves, "We've been here before. We're a good team. We've got the playoff experience." And the Pistons are going to say, "Hey, we're the Pistons. We're here. We're for real. We were playing." They're going to say we were playing playoff basketball down the stretch anyway. They're going to say anything they can to dismiss their lack of a playoff experience. Now, could it be a factor? Maybe down the stretch of a tight game where the crowd's going crazy, and maybe it could. But they got a lot of guys though, Chris, that have been in the playoffs too. Harris, I
Yes,
keep mentioning the same guys: Harris, Beasley, and
easily.
Hardaway Jr. These aren't kids.
Schroeder,
Yeah, Schroeder, exactly. These aren't guys that they're not all young. I mean, they're not all inexperienced. Yeah, the core is, there's Stewart, Cunningham. Ivy's not playing, of course. Stewart, Cunningham, Holland. Yeah, sure. All-Star Thompson. Yeah, of course. It's their first rodeo. Well, I just think that once you get playing the games and you start to bang around a couple of nights, and you're in game 3 and 4, and you're in Detroit, I don't know that the lack of playoff experience is a big deal. As a matter of fact, I think that the team that has the experience is more pressure on them because everybody expects them to have that experience used to their advantage.
How important is it for the Pistons to get one of the first 2 games in Madison Square Garden and also get that NBA record 14-game playoff losing streak off their backs as well?
Yeah. They're going to, if you talk to them individually in the locker room, they're not going to care about the 14. They're not going to care about that losing streak you just talked about. They're not going to care about that. They just want to go out there and win games in this series. How important is it? Of course it's important. Of course you want to come home 1-1, obviously. But again, I think if the game, it's going to depend on how tight these games are played. If they come home down 0-2, but they were both, nip and tuck battles, and they were both games came down in the last couple of minutes, you can almost live with that. They come home 0-2 and they were spanked by 15 points or 17 points, and then maybe it's a little bit of the luster's off. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they have a great shot, quite frankly, to win one of the 2 games because of how well they've played them in the regular season, although I know it's different. But again, Tom Thibodeau plays his starters a lot. And so what you see in the regular season from the Knicks is almost what you're going to expect to see in the playoffs.
What is the mood like in Detroit right now with the media and the fan base? And do you feel both games at Little Caesars Arena will be sold out?
Oh, I think that, yeah, it's going to be a madhouse. I get the sense that there's a lot of excitement, and I get the sense that there's some looseness. I'm just sensing that the media is having a little bit of fun with this as well. Of course, we haven't played the series yet. I mean, when there's this big gap between the regular season and the because of the play-ins, because you got to wait for the play-ins to happen. So there's a lot of time yet. We haven't even. We're still 3 days away from game 1, or 2 days away from game 1. Or is it? Well, they start. No, it's starting Saturday. So we're
Saturday.
So we're 3 games away from 3 days away from game 1 still. So there's a lot of time for the media to kind of gin up some stories and write about some fluffy stuff. And that's to be expected. Once the series gets going, I think that the fans are going to really, really get into it. There's nothing like, a playoff series. This is, like I say, way different than when they played the Bucks in 19. They were no match for the Bucks. This is a team that really could give the Knicks some fits. I'm not going to tell you, Chris, they're going to win the series, but I think this could go 6.
I tend to agree with you, and I really feel the Pistons can win this series in 6 games, and I really feel Cade Cunningham could be the best player, will be the best player in this series as well. And Greg, since I got you on here, what are the chances of Jaden Ivey returning in the first round against the Knicks? And overall, the Pistons are, I think, coming into the series relatively healthy now.
Yeah, they are. They missed Cade a little bit in March. Tobias Harris sat down a little bit toward the end of the season. They've been some Knicks, just some minor Knicks and cuts. There wasn't other than Ivy, obviously. There wasn't really a lot of major injuries, thank goodness, where guys went down for long periods of time. As far as Ivy goes, I don't think he's going to come back for the. I wouldn't bring him back, quite frankly. I don't think this series is important enough to rush him back. His career is way too important. He's way too much of an important part of this franchise to rush him back for a first round series that they may not even win, even with him playing. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what's going on medically with him. How that leg is responding to treatment. I haven't heard anything that suggests he'll play in this series, and I really hope that they err on the side of caution. Just like the Lions, they were always talking about Aiden Hutchinson. Well, now we see in the rearview mirror, there was no chance Aiden Hutchinson was going to play, even in the Super Bowl. I mean, that was ridiculous. So I hope that they err on the side of caution and be smart with this kid, because he's going to be a very important. That's the other exciting thing, by the way, is to think that they did all this with him only playing half the season.
And that's amazing as well. And hey, Greg, this is only the fourth time these two franchises have ever met in the playoffs. 84 with Bernard King beating the Pistons in 5 games at the Joe Louis Arena, and then 1990 the Bad Boys put out the Knicks, and I guess the last time they met in the playoffs was 1992, and that really was the end of the Bad Boys era after 92, in my opinion. I know they say the Bulls, but really that's when they started dismantling the team. It was after that loss to the Knicks.
Yeah, for sure. I wrote about I wrote about Bernard King. I was at Joe Louis Arena for Game 5. That was an incredible experience. Isaiah scored 16 points in 90 seconds to will that game into overtime. He fouled out, and Bernard King kept doing Bernard King things, and he was just too much. But that series was still in NBA circles is regarded as one of the best, certainly one of the best first round series that have ever been played. Not only because of Bernard King, but because the Pistons that was your first kind of national peak at the Pistons core of Isaiah, Vinny, Lambier, and some other, John Long, some other like kind of side characters, supporting players. That was kind of like in Chuck's first year, of course. That was kind of the first exposure that the national people got of what the Pistons could be. And that was their first appearance in the playoffs in 6 years, in 84, by the way. So it would have been nice to have won that series, of course, but you're absolutely dead on about 92. That absolutely, they lost the first round series to the Knicks in 92. Completely agree with you. That was the last hurrah, if you will, for the Bad Boys, for sure. Everybody either got old or got traded or whatever. That was a team by that time that was pretty much held together with baling wire. There wasn't much going on there at that point. So it's great for the team. They get to play, in Madison Square Garden, get to play in New York. Wonderful exposure. They're going to have a lot of press there, a lot of press that is going to see them play in the playoffs, way more than if they played Indiana, of course. So it's going to be fun.
I know this is a little bit too early yet, Greg, but do you feel if Cade Cunningham continues to play at this level for the next few years, he might start being compared to the great Isaiah Thomas? Do you see a little bit of similarities between Isaiah Thomas and Cade Cunningham?
No. And the reason I'll say no is based in a holistic way. Isaiah Thomas wasn't a basketball player. He was an entity in the NBA. Okay. Between his smile, between his personality, between the games, the playing through the pain, between the championships, between the national recognition he got, there's so many things about this guy. Even post playing career, Isaiah has remained in the consciousness of a lot of people, whether it was as the coach of the Knicks, leading the Raptors, running the CBA, whatever the case may be. Okay. He has been a presence, in the NBA. From a basketball standpoint, so the K isn't near that now. And from a basketball standpoint, he's not there yet either, because he doesn't have the I call Isaiah, my nickname for him is the smiling assassin, because he was the guy who could put a dagger in your gut literally while smiling at you. And there's a flair for the dramatic that Isaiah had. He could play poorly for 40, 45 minutes, but you still wanted him to be the guy at the end of the game. And I know Vinnie Johnson was the one who won the championship in 1990 with his 007 shot. I get that. And I know that Joe Dumars was the MVP, in 89 and everything of the finals. But Isaiah, if you remember, in game one of that series in 1990 against Portland at the Palace, Pistons were down 13, 14, 15 points in the third quarter, looked lifeless. Isaiah absolutely put it in another gear and took that game over. And that's what he did a lot in the playoffs, was take games over. Cade Cunningham hasn't done that yet. And so it's hard for me to even put him anywhere near that category. He hasn't even played a playoff game yet. We'll see how he does in the playoffs. But at the same time, Chris, if he has a poor series against the Knicks, I'm not going to vilify the guy. It's his first playoff series. We'll see. But Isaiah was a force of nature. He wasn't just a basketball player, and he's the greatest Piston of all time. So that's really hard for me to put a guy like Cade Cunningham in that category after the few seasons that Cade has played.
I guess they should have reworded the question and said about the talent level of Cade. And I guess we're going to find out how good he is in the playoffs. But you're right. Even if he has a bad playoffs, you can't write him off. He's come a long way this year. Is developing into a star.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, ultimately they are two different types of players. They both play essentially the same position. That's true. It's a different era, of course. I mean, Isaiah played in an era that was way more physical, way more. The 3-point shot wasn't nearly what it was when Isaiah played as it is now. Right. That's the other thing. But they're two different types of players. Isaiah's was way more creative. Now I know that Cade gets a lot of assists. His assist numbers are pretty good, but that's not. You just don't look at that. It's like looking at fielding percentage to tell whether or not a guy's a good defensive player in baseball. So. But they're just two different players. I mean, Cade is, he might be better at going to the hoop maybe than Isaiah, but he's not getting the calls that Isaiah used to get either. And hopefully that'll start to come with time. But I will say this, he's probably potentially going to be a better 3-point shooter than Isaiah was, mainly because he shoots it more. When Isaiah played, for the most part, teams would take 5 or 6 3-pointers a game, maybe.
Yes.
Now they're taking 30, 40, 50 3-pointers in a game. So, but I think if you're going to, Cade's probably might end up being a better 3-point shooter or better outside shooter than Isaiah was. But there were so many intangibles that make Isaiah Thomas such a great player.
Greg, before we wrap this up in a couple of minutes, how do you see the series between New York and Detroit playing out?
I think it's going to get a little chippy, and I don't, I know I just talked. I know a few minutes ago about the Pacers and how that would go, but I think this is going to get a little chippy. I would pay very close attention to Karl Anthony Towns and Isaiah Stewart. I think that's going to be interesting. I really do. Just based on what I saw in the regular season, based on what I saw the last time they played the Knicks. As a matter of fact, I feel like this could get a little chippy by the time it's going to all said and done. But ultimately, I think it's going to be the star players that are going to, again, Brunson is going to be a handful. The Pistons, though, to win this series, Chris, I think have to have all hands on deck. They've got to get scoring from other people. They've got to get the Tobias Harris's going. They got to, they've got to, Ron Howland's got to do his thing. Osar Thompson's got to be, be in their bonnet defensively. They need Beasley. They need Hardaway Jr. They need everybody on deck in this series because they can spread the wealth around offensively. They do have a lot of scores. It's not unusual to see the Pistons, have 6-7 guys in double figures at the end of any given game, and they're going to need that against the Knicks.
Who do you see being an X factor for the Pistons?
That's a good one. X factor. Wow. Again, I hate to. I want to say Beasley, but it's kind of disingenuous to say that because the guy's been great all year. So it's kind of hard to say he's an X factor because to me, X factors are like guys that you weren't expecting to do necessarily much of anything. So I'm going to not say Beasley, and I'm going to say somebody who might surprise a little bit, and that's Simone Fontecchio. I think he's another guy he's a long guy who can come off the bench, and I know he's not had a great year this year, and he's been kind of persona non grata by the Pistons fan base. They've been kind of down on this guy. I'm telling you though, if he's the personification of an X factor. He can come off the bench, give you 15 minutes, drop a few buckets, hit a couple of threes, keep things going like in the third quarter when the starters are resting. Give Beasley another shooter to complement Beasley on the floor. He could be one of those guys that when you look at the end of the series might have only averaged 7 or 8 points a game, but it's the quality of those points and it's the kind of guy that you would talk about after a game and say, wow, what about Fontecchio? Wasn't he pretty good? His stat line may not look that impressive, but the quality of the shots that he had, he might be one of those guys you kind of talk about. So I'm going to say Fontecchio.
I'm going to go with Duran. I think he.
Okay. We didn't even talk about him. Yeah, Jalen Duran. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts of his development this year as well?
Yeah,
with his
I'm
team?
glad. Shame on me for not talking about him. Yeah, he's been, if you remember correctly, about Duran, a little more than a year ago. I mean, like December of 23 when they were really struggling. And if you remember, Duran kept going down with ankle injuries. He kept missing games because he had apparently he had weak ankles. And that was the concern with the fan base. Like, this guy's, he's a porcelain doll. His ankles are always, giving out on him. That hasn't happened. He's proven to be nothing but durable ever since then. Nobody talks about his ankles anymore. But what he has done, he's really, really improved his game, his overall game. And he's another one of those guys that plays with a chip on his shoulder. He's turning into a better rim protector than I thought he was going to be. He's still not beef stew in that regard, but he's a force to be reckoned with. I mean, he's not going to, again, his numbers aren't going to necessarily jump out. I mean, he's a good rebounder. There's no question about that. Offensively, he's still, a work in progress, but he's going to bang in there. He's going to get some rebounds. He's going to, he's another guy who could give Towns some fits. That's a good one. That's a good call. He could be an X factor for sure.
Quick thoughts on tonight's playing games: Miami and Chicago, and Dallas and Sacramento. Who do you see coming out of these games tonight?
Yeah, I those are all bad teams. Not bad. They're bad in the East. They're not so bad in the West. I like the Kings in the West, and I think I like Miami, even though they've got a worse record than the Bulls do. The Bulls to me that's a weird team. I couldn't really figure them out all year. I thought they underperformed this year. I thought they would be better than they were. I know that they had that miraculous last second win against the Lakers a few weeks ago, but I feel like and they've Spoelstra in Miami, he's a veteran coach. He's been there. I know it's tough because it's essentially a one and out thing. It could go either way, obviously, in 48 minutes, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Heat won that game.
How much does that make the NBA better with a strong Detroit Pistons team?
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. That is a wonderful point to make. I really think that there are certain franchises in every sport that if they're not good, it's not good for the sport. I used to say that about the Raiders in football. I used to say that when the Raiders were bad, it's like Notre Dame being bad. It's like it's no fun to beat. There was a period of time where it wasn't a big deal to beat Notre Dame. It's like Notre Dame. Yeah, okay. That's not fun. It's fun to dislike Notre Dame and to hate Notre Dame and beat Notre Dame in football because they're so good. And the Raiders was the same thing. It's like there used to be a mystique about the Raiders, and if you beat them, whether you beat them on the road or in your building, it was a big deal. It's like you beat the Raiders. The Raiders were always this. What was the record on Monday Night Football for all those years? Like for a while, like 18-5 or something on Monday Night Football. The Raiders were. They were a great national presence. You had Al Davis. You had the just win, baby, commitment to excellence, all that stuff. The black uniforms, the goofy guys who dress up in the stands. They were like a whole marketing entity of themselves. And when the Raiders weren't good or when they're not good, it's just like it's like the Red Wings now. I think the Red Wings being not good is not good for the NHL. I'm going to be biased because I'm from Detroit. But back to your question, a good Pistons franchise is great for the NBA. Why? Because right now, national media is starting to talk about the Pistons in the same breath as they were talking about the Bad Boys because of kind of the scrapes they've gotten into. Pistons have gotten into some scrapes this year. There's been some suspensions. There's been some stuff going on. JB had that rant in Detroit about a month ago when he was complaining about the calls against OKC. There's an edge to this team. There's a chip on their shoulder. And I think the national media is starting to pick up on that. And they are making the comparisons to the Bad Boys teams. And I think the Pistons being good, and not only just being good, Chris, but being good in the way they're being good with hard-nosed defense. We're going to take no guff from you. We're the Pistons. That is even better for the NBA.
And speaking of Piston legends, just quick thoughts on Joe Dumars becoming an executive with the New Orleans Pelicans.
That surprised me a little bit. Joe's been out of the executive game for a while now. He's been working for the league, as you know. He's going back home to Louisiana, all that other stuff. Yeah, the Pelicans that's another weird franchise. Zion Williamson's played for a million coaches. It seems like he's a new coach every year. He misses a lot of games. He doesn't have a lot of help. I feel like that's a franchise that's kind of like a sleeping giant, though. I don't know about that one. That's a good one. I don't know how Joe will do down there and it's not like he's been away from the league, but he's been away from being an executive for about 11 years now, or whatever it is. And I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with that. I think it's going to make a lot of people in New Orleans happy because it's like, it's like a coming home for him, a homecoming. But I just hope they find some stability there because Williamson has just not had it since he's been in the NBA. He's always playing for different coaches all the time.
And that happened too with the Pistons for a while as well.
Yeah.
And winning helps. Winning a winning team, a winning franchise helps with stability. And I like that move for New Orleans as well. And Greg, before we wrap this up, can you tell us about your latest episode of the Knee Jerks podcast and your next upcoming episode? And again, where can people watch and listen into the Knee Jerks podcast?
Yeah, sure. We're available pretty much wherever podcasts are sold. You can find us definitely on was it Stitch? Is it called Stitch?
Stitch, right? Twitch. I know Twitch. I'm on Twitch.
I always make that mistake. Twitch.
Yeah,
Twitch. I made that mistake a couple weeks. You can find us on Twitch. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on just go to the homepage, thekneejerks.net, and that's where everything is. We record every other Monday. Our last episode was on April 7th. We talked to City Hall, who's one of our favorite guests. He's an NBA stats guru. He knows the league up and down, left and right, backwards and forwards. He was on the show on the 7th talking about what we're talking about. We're not doing a show on the 21st. We'll come back on May 5th. But kneejerks.net, that's the homepage. All of our episodes are archived there. And that's to listen to the podcast. If you want to watch, you can go to YouTube.
And are you able to give us a little preview of your next Substack article that you're working on yet?
No, because I do those every Monday, and sometimes I don't know until I sit down behind my laptop what I'm going to write about. It depends on what's going on in the world. I probably will write about. I'm sure I'll write about. I don't know. We'll see. I might write about the Pistons game 1. I hate to do that because game 2 will be on Monday, and my column will drop like 2 hours before game 2. So I don't know if I want to do that. We'll see. But gregino.substack.com. You can subscribe, and I'll be in your inbox every Monday.
And there's another Pistons announcer I'm happy for too, and I forgot to mention him, the longtime radio voice of the Pistons, Mark Champion.
Yep.
And I've been listening to him on radio again. And I haven't listened to Pistons basketball for a while because they haven't been very good lately. But I just forgot how good of a broadcaster he is, and George Blaha. So I'm happy for both of them who have been with this organization for a long time.
I'll give you a quick story about that. George's first season. First of all, George is going to be 80 pretty soon, I think. George's first season as Pistons announcer was in 1976, fall of 76. That was the first year I started listening to the Pistons seriously on the radio. I would listen to the Pistons in my bedroom. I grew up as an only child in Livonia, Michigan. I would listen to the Pistons in my bedroom on my radio. Almost every night that they played, I would listen to the Pistons. I keep it on in the background while I did whatever I was doing in my bedroom, doing my homework or whatever. And that's how I first got to know who George Blaha was. And I thought to myself, this guy's pretty good. I kind of like the way he announces. I kind of like his style. And no way did I think that 49 years later, I would still be talking about George Blaha calling Pistons games, and God bless him. He's been great. You forget though, these guys, like you said, have to, to broadcast a 14-68 season. That's tough. We can walk away. We don't have to watch them. These guys have to show up to the arena every night, make road trips. And when you're watching a team lose that much and you got to try to keep that's tough. And George was, he's an older guy, and to be broadcasting a 14-win team when you're in your upper 70s, that's not an easy thing to do. And let's not forget Greg Kelster too, by the way.
Yes,
Greg
he does a good job.
He's been doing those games on television with George for I don't know how long now, 20 years maybe, if not longer, probably longer. And Greg has done a great job, and they're a great team. And we've been very blessed in Detroit to have, in all sports, to have really good announcers over the course of time.
And being a Philadelphia Eagles fan, Merle Reese has been the voice of the Eagles since 76, 77, and he was with the team when they had some bad years as well. So Merle Reese and George Blaha, two legends, and I've been really lucky. Yeah,
I did not know that. Wow, that's amazing.
He took over, I think, in late 76 when the Eagles' other announcer, I can't remember his name, he unfortunately committed suicide, and Merle Reese took over during the 76 season, and he's been their play-by-play voice on radio in Philly since then. And when you think of the Philadelphia Eagles, you think of Merle Reese, just like George Blaha. And when George does hang it up one day, I want to see a statue of him at Little Caesars Arena, along with Isaiah Thomas and Steve Eiserman at some point.
Yeah, it'd be nice if they did something for him, like put a banner up or something. It would be nice for sure. I didn't know that about the Eagles announcer. That's amazing.
Yeah, and he's a class act, and I'm hoping one day maybe I can get him on. And these guys are just proving age is just a number. They have a passion for what they do, and they're still at the top of their games. And it's just amazing what they do, both of them. And I think both of these cities, I think Philadelphia and Detroit are similar. I know Philly's a little bigger population-wise, but both a great sports city and very passionate about their teams.
Yep, for sure. Absolutely.
And finally, Greg, where can my audience follow you on social media? And what's a fun fact about the series between the Knicks and Pistons that fans might not know about?
Well, first of all, where to find me is at Greg Eno. You can find me there on X and also on Blue Sky at Greg Eno in both cases. Fun fact about this particular series, or just about the two franchises?
About the series, I guess the playoffs history.
Fun fact. I would say that I think a fun fact is that they haven't played each other very much. I mean, you mentioned the fact they haven't played each other since '92. Both teams have kind of been good when the other team wasn't. Kind of a deal. They've it's been rare where both teams have been really good at the same time. Even when they played each other in the playoffs, like either one of the team was really good, the other team was kind of okay. And vice versa, we talk about '92 when the Knicks beat the Pistons, but yet in '90, that was the year the Pistons won their second championship, and the Knicks weren't really all that good, even though they had Pat Ewing. So they haven't really been like two behemoths at the same time. This is probably, though, of the four times they've met, in the playoffs, I would suggest to you this is probably the most intriguing matchup. I think the other three, the one in '84 ended up being great because of the King thing, but nobody saw that coming. 90 and 92 were, they're all right. But this one, I think, there's a lot more anticipation about this series, I think, than the other three, maybe combined.
Well, Greg, hey, I want to say I apologize for keeping you over 30, 35 minutes, but I want to say thank you so much for giving us almost an hour of your time to talk Detroit Pistons. And you have an open invite to come back on my show again in the future. And I'm really looking forward to the NBA playoffs this year for the first time in a long time because the Pistons are back. And I think this Pistons Knicks series will go at least 6, maybe 7 games. I wouldn't be shocked if it went 7 games.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. I'll give you one more real quick, and I got to go. But I'll give you one more fun fact. It's not really about the Knicks, but we have been doing. You mentioned the Knee Jerks podcast. We have been doing this podcast since May of 2009, which means
congratulations.
Thank you. Which means that in 16 years, Al and I have not been able to talk about a Pistons playoff win in the history of the Knee Jerks. In 16 seasons, we have not been able to come on the air and talk about the Pistons winning a playoff game. Think about that for a second. So we'll see what happens.
I think that streak's going to end in this
series. I agree.
All right. Well, Greg, I'm going to let you go. But again, thank you so much. And I want to wish you and your family a happy Easter, happy holidays, and enjoy the NBA playoffs and the Pistons Knicks game, which is this Saturday night, 6:00 from Madison Square Garden. Thank you so much, Greg.
Thanks for having me on, my friend. Good to see you.
You too. Take care, Greg. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
All right, guys, that concludes season 10, episode 29, overall 524 of Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show, sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership here in Guelph. And I want to say thank you to my guest, Greg Eno, who's on his 7th appearance, the co-host of the Knee Jerks podcast and a sports historian out of Detroit. Coming on, Greg came on tonight to talk Detroit Pistons and New York Knicks with us as well. And before we wrap up this show, guys, the Buffalo Bandits clinched the #1 seed in the National Lacrosse League playoffs this past Saturday night at the KeyBank Center. And I'm going to play some highlights of that win. Their 15-12 win over the Halifax Thunderbirds at the KeyBank Center. And this clip is courtesy of the National Lacrosse League's YouTube channel. Bandits Halifax with John Gerkler and Pat Gregor with the highlights.
Whipping a back score! 10 goals in the last 4 games. Along with DeHook and Anacok and Kyle Buchanan. And McKay. Smith, top of the slot. Burn with a drive. Scores! Both teams playing 5 aside. Randy Stotts with some room to move. Back to the top of the slot. Now the back scores. And the youngster, Mike Robinson. Finding Twine, and Pat, that goose egg comes off the scoreboard real quick. That's how you wheeled over to the Bandits captain, Steve Priolo, and it's a mad dash with a 3-on-2. Josh Burns scores!
Here in Buffalo, and immediately has been a great transition threat.
There's a score! Skedman. So he's going to throw that dart out pretty quickly. Play continues down into the Bandit zone. There's a shot on score. Halifax.
90 points this year. As we'll get a look right here. Just stings that corner right over the shoulder.
Throw the flag. Speaking for John Tavares. There's another opportunity. Score. Halifax. Relentless right at the moment. And their connection perfect. And guess who? Kurt Steyer's the president and owner of the... Oh, there's a shot to go by Dawson Theed. Nice play by the monster Dawson Theed with a low drive. And cleared back up to center and in over the line is Dave Smith. Skidage. Check out Buchanan. Likes to fire it over to Peterson. Now to Thief. They both play catch together. Shot by Stout scores. 5-5 the score. And Randy McKay leaving it back over to Byrne. Byrne eyeing it out, looking for the room. Scores!
Move bodies out of the way a little bit more than some of the other teams across the league.
Randy starts the drive. He scores! High side, far side, near side, short side.
So Pearson smartly makes the change to get some fresh legs out there.
Byrne scores! Sooner or later. Peterson. Back over to Cody Jamieson. Now to Thief. 10 seconds left on the shot clock. Score! Halifax! Dawson feed. Park sets it up to Scanlon, who gets it back to Smith. Now to Buchanan. Far side. Score! Fraser. And down goes the ball. Deep from the corner. Robinson getting it back over to Hogarth. Now to the near side to Randy Stotts. Stotts with a shot. Scores! What a move by Randy Stotts. And Halifax right back in it. 3-4 goal game so far this year. Here's a break for Buffalo. Scores! Boy, talk about quick transition. 9-8 Buffalo. Stotts with the power and the shot. Still hanging on. Swim move. Stotts scores!
Activates beast mode. Recognizes, look, he's looking at the clock. Okay, no backside help. Okay, I'm just going to drive my shoulder into Belter's solar plex.
Mad dash out. Matisse. Riolo. Smith. Shooting. Scores!
When the Dane train gets moving south, he is tough to stop. But again, transition offense. A big play one end. And Smith streaking off the bench. Takes flight.
With the ball down into the Bandits zone. Gets some help. There's a low drive. Cody Jamieson scores. 10 the score. Taking it on his own from the corner. Back to the top of the slot. Shot on hard. Score. Halifax. Power play goal. Ron John. He's got Priolo with him. Ron John to Priolo. Scores!
John, there's Juice goals, and then there's this. Huge loose ball by Matisse. Gets it over to Ron John. Ron John finds his captain.
Kyle Buchanan leaving it back over to Josh Byrne. Byrne now to the near side to Smith. Smith begins to move. Back out in front. Buchanan scores! His own. Jamieson scores. Nobody thought he would come in. And the captain of the Halifax Thunderbirds comes right in, and Josh Byrne with it over the restraining line. Low drive, score! Buffalo! Still hanging on to it in the webbing of his stick. Double teamed on the play. Dane Smith with the ball. Leaving it out of front. Score! 91. Getting a beauty from 92.
Dane Smith, are you kidding me? Look at how does that ball stay in his stick? You need a
rebound, Buffalo, and here's a break for the Bandits. A breakaway. Cam Wires on his own. Scores!
4-3 lacrosse, stand up. The Great Grinder shows up.
And the Bandits will win this one 15-12.
That clip was courtesy of the National Lacrosse League's channel, and you can also check out the league, NLL bandits.com. Speaking of the Buffalo Bandits, this is, I believe, the 5th time in team history the Buffalo Bandits have won 13 or more games, and all 4 times they've won 13 regular season games. They've been in the National Lacrosse League Finals, winning back-to-back championships in winning back-to-back championships in 2023 and 2024, and the Bandits are trying to be the first National Lacrosse League team since the win 3 straight. The Bandits will close off the regular season schedule at Georgia Swarm this Saturday at 7:30. You can get the game on 1520 The Bet in Buffalo with John Gerkler, or you can watch it on TSN Plus or NLL Plus as well. And again, if you want to check out the Buffalo Bandits or get some tickets for their upcoming playoff game Friday, April 25th at 7:30 at the KeyBank Center, the opponent to be announced. The Bandits will be the number 1 seed again, and their first home playoff game, Friday, April 25th, 7:30, KeyBank Center. You can get your tickets at bandits.com. Bandits.com. And that clip, again, was courtesy of the National Lacrosse League with John Gerkler, and color analyst was Pat Gregor on that call with their 15-12 win over a very good Halifax Thunderbird team as well. Before we wrap up this show, guys, the next live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show, sponsored by BarryCullen.com, Monday, April 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern with my special guest, Godi Goddess Speaking in Tongues. She is a stand-up comedian out of the New York area as well. And speaking of the New York area, the Pistons-Knicks, 4th time in history they'll meet in the NBA playoffs. First time since 1992. The series will start Saturday, April 19th, and Monday, April 21st at Madison Square Gardens, with the Knicks being the home team. And then returns for games 3 and 4 at Little Caesars Arena on Thursday and next Sunday at 1 p.m. And then a game 5 will be at Madison Square Garden on Tuesday, April 29th. Game 6 would be Thursday, May 1st at Little Caesars Arena. And a game 7, which me and Greg both of us think it could go to, would be Saturday, May 3rd at Madison Square Garden. So Pistons and Knicks start game 1 this Saturday, April 19th, 6 o'clock tip-off on ESPN or TSN and here in Canada. And before we wrap up this show, guys, Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership is the official sponsor of Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show. At Barry Cullen Chevrolet right now, check out a 2025 Trax 1RS, lease from $159 bi-weekly. That's like $79 weekly at 5.9% interest for 24 months. And eligible Costco members, that's right, eligible Costco members can receive $1,200 bonuses on eligible models. More details at barrycullen.com or drop by the dealership at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Mall and tell them that Chris Palme sent ya. Speaking of Chris Palme, I am also on Cameo.com. If you'd like a personalized video message, birthday wishes, pep talk, want to talk sports with me, check me out on Cameo.com and type in Chris Palme and book your Cameo today. And as we wrap up the show, guys, I am now on another social media site, Blue Sky Social. It's like what Twitter X used to be. At Blue Sky Social at Live with CDP19, and make sure you follow me there as well. And as we wrap up the show, guys, if you're looking to adopt a pet, check out the Cambridge and District Humane Society, 1650 Dunbar Road in Cambridge, Ontario. Telephone number 519-623-7722, extension 0, or visit their website at cambridgehumanesociety.org. All the animals up for adoption, their profiles are on cambridgehumanesociety.org. And if you're looking to volunteer, like myself, for the past year as a dog walker twice a week, you can go on their website and fill out a volunteer application form there as well. And they're also doing a quarterly 50-50 draw, where the winner gets 50% of the money and the shelter gets 50, and you can buy tickets through their website. Click on events to get your tickets, or you can drop by the office again at 1650 Dunbar Road in Cambridge, Ontario. And Cambridge Humane Society right now they're looking for wet puppy food, cat litter, cat treats, dog treats. They're looking for bedding, towels, and also the Cambridge District Humane Society every Wednesday has a pet emergency fund for those who are financially struggling in the Cambridge area. If you have some cat food or dog food to donate, they would greatly appreciate it. Or any kind of cash donations you can make to the Cambridge District Humane Society would be greatly appreciated. They do wonderful work down there with getting our homeless furry friends into loving families and loving homes as well. So if you're able to help out the Cambridge District Humane Society, please check them out. And I have their graphics right down here again, or give them a call at 519-623-7722, extension 0. And check out the pets down there. There's some great animals down there looking for forever homes and that as well. Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show is live streamed on these platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, X, Twitch, LinkedIn, and now available on Instagram. And I'm hoping one day StreamYard will have a partnership with TikTok. So fingers crossed on that. You can also check out my website, beacons.ai/Chris D. Palme. Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show again is brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, along with their great selection of all-electric vehicles and Cadillac vehicles as well. You can call them again at 519-824-0210 or email them at info@barrycullen.com. You can follow this content creator on TikTok at Chris Palme, my new page. And let's get back to 1,000 followers so I can do some TikTok lives. Check out all my content there as well. StreamYard is the official live stream provider of Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show. If you're into webinars or podcasting, check out StreamYard.com. They have basic free plans or paid professional plans like I do. And if you're a business that does a lot of webinars, go to StreamYard.com and contact their sales department. I've been with StreamYard now for over 4 years. I highly recommend it. Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show. The audio version is on these platforms: iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify for podcasters, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Cast, Spotify, Castbox, LinkedIn, Pandora, Tuned In, YouTube Music, and Good Pods. And please remember to hit the subscribe and like notifications as well. Finally, you can email the show at Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show at cpalme19@gmail.com. Any comments, questions, suggestions, feedback would be greatly appreciated. And also, if you'd like to tip the host, I am on PayPal. If you want to tip me, if you'd like, for my talk show and my media work, PayPal at cpalme19@gmail.com. Finally, you guys can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, X, Threads, Instagram, my YouTube channel. Please subscribe and hit like. And I'm also on LinkedIn and Threads. So anywhere there's a major social media platform, check out Chris Palme Live with CDP as well. And that about wraps it up for tonight, guys. As for sports, the Bandits are at Georgia this Saturday at 7:30 to wrap up the regular season. The Red Wings have 2 road games left. The Red Wings have missed the playoffs 9 years in a row. The Red Wings are in New Jersey tonight, and then they are in Toronto to conclude the 24-25 regular season. And as for the Tigers, they just lost 2 out of 3 in Milwaukee. They lost again today, 5-1 to the Milwaukee Brewers. So the Tigers this weekend are back home at Comerica Park to take on the Kansas City Royals. And again, I want to say thank you to my guest tonight, Greg Eno, his 7th appearance. Check out his podcast show called the Knee Jerks Podcast with Al and Nick. And he's also on Substack. So please subscribe to his Greg Eno Substack page. He has a new article coming out once a week. And Greg's a sports historian as well. And he knows sports and the Detroit teams as well as anybody in the business as well. So, and again, next Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show, again, sponsored by barrycullen.com, Monday, April 21st at 7 p.m. again with special guest Goldie got us speaking in tongues, a stand-up comedian out of New York. And I have a number of new guests and new shows coming next week as well. And I want to wish everybody a happy Good Friday, happy Easter, and whatever, if you celebrate Easter or not, just wish you a happy holiday and enjoy the weekend. And we'll see you back here on Monday, April 21st for another edition of Live with CDP Sports Entertainment Talk Show, brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet here in Guelph. So have a great weekend, happy Easter, and we'll see you next week for another edition of Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show.